Oh, thank you all for tuning in to another edition of Outside the Shop with me, your host, Daryl D. Lane. As always, I want to thank you all for tuning in, as this is the show that I get to talk about everything that I normally don't get to talk about on my regular sports podcast, Barbershop Sports Talk, which airs on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, all your podcasting apps and platforms. The podcast that I released yesterday, that I had Kenny Sim on, scouting expert for 247 Sports. We recapped week 16 of NFL action. We broke everything down. So if you have not checked that out, definitely go look at that. The podcast that I have planned for tonight that I'm going to release tomorrow, I'm going to have my good friend Silas on, hopefully. Still trying to make sure that happens. But if we do have Silas on, we're going to kind of talk about the Bills, their season, some more interesting Silas stuff in the Los Angeles Lakers and LeBron, because Silas seems to have a little bit of a fetish for that. So we'll definitely get into all that just so everybody knows what's going on for tomorrow's pod. But here's where I want to start. How about them Bills, baby? How about them Bills? 38-9, beat down, smacked down, undressing, unbuttoned the New England Patriots on Monday Night Football on ESPN, prime time, 8 o'clock for all of us to see. Who would not love to watch it? As a Bills fan, I was super excited. We just kind of saw a changing of the guard. The New England Patriots are going to finish this season with a losing record. The Buffalo Bills are going to finish the season with a winning record, winning the AFC East, and will probably be the second seed in the NFL playoffs for the AFC on that side of the bracket. Josh Allen, 27-36, 320 yards passing, 9 yards per pass. That's almost every time Josh Allen throws, he's almost getting a first down. That's amazing. That's extraordinary. That's what he did against the Patriots. 4 touchdowns, no picks, dominated the game, controlled the game. Him and Stephon Diggs. Diggs, 9 receptions, $145. 3 touchdowns. This is becoming the most dangerous duo in the NFL, folks. And when we talk about wide receiver quarterback combinations, there's a couple. I'm just going to give you them really quickly. You can talk about DeVonta Adams and Aaron Rodgers. You can talk about Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. You can talk about Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf. You can talk about Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, or Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. But then you have to put Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs in that conversation. They have earned that. They've been amazing for the Bills this year. Josh Allen has went up a level. The trade for Diggs from Minnesota, they've come together. They were talking about on ESPN after the game when they were getting interviewed how they bonded over playing video games. So obviously they have a connection. It's really special, and it's working well for the Bills. It's really special stuff. I'm really excited to see how this team goes into the playoffs. Now New England, man, it was sad. 9 for 21. 56 passing yards. This is combined for Cam Newton and Jarrett Stidham. By the way, Cam Newton was benched in the third quarter for Jarrett Stidham. That's all they could do. 9 for 21, 56 yards. Josh Allen in that game, I'll say this. Josh Allen in that game, 320 yards. Huge discrepancy, huge difference. Like I've been saying, the New England Patriots pass offense is remedial. It's an F. Failure of class. Come back and take summer school. It has not been good. I'm worried for Cam Newton. I think his career is done. I think Jarrett Stidham's career might be over before it even gets started. And Tom Brady is somewhere cackling, saying, "You thought that dude was better than me? You thought Cam was better than me? Come on, Bill." So obviously, the Patriots, they have not been as bad as maybe we would think, as they're going to be 6-10 or 7-9. But if you don't have a quarterback, most important position in the NFL, you are going to struggle. This team does not have a legitimate quarterback. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what New England does next year in terms of getting a quarterback, and I think that will make them, again, a contender in the AFC East. But for now, it is the Bills. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to not play Ben Roethlisberger against the Cleveland Browns on Sunday. They're going to call off the Dogs, as they've clinched the division title. They've clinched the playoff berth, and this all but probably ensures that Cleveland's going to be in the playoffs. I know this is probably good for Cleveland fans. You're not going to get the big bad boogeyman and Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers trying to crash on the Browns parade to make it to the playoffs for the first time in like 18, 16 years, something crazy like that. So that is good for Browns fans. What I do think is interesting, though, because also the Bills could be in this situation as well, because I don't think we've heard yet if Sean McDermott are going to play in the Bills, if they're going to play Josh Allen, and if they're going to play Stephon Diggs and all these guys against the Miami Dolphins for their last game. Because here's what's interesting. You have a team in the Bills and you have a team in the Steelers. They could potentially, while they've clinched and already have a divisional title, already have a home playoff game, but they could take their division rivals, the Browns and the Dolphins, out of the playoffs. The Steelers have chosen not to do that. They're going to take a rest. I know they played like 10 straight games. But, the Bills, they could just knock Miami out. I'm not saying they should do that and risk injury and play guys, but I've always thought that, go full steam ahead. You keep your rhythm going, keep what you have. Maybe if you just play them for a quarter or a half anyway. And I don't think you should be afraid of injury, but I do think it's really interesting when we see, both these teams have a chance to knock out the divisional competition, and it does not seem at this moment that they're going to do that. I'm sure that Josh Allen, we will not see him on the field against the Dolphins. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would not bet on that. So next up, Rams versus Cardinals. This is also going to be another divisional game that has big implications for both these two teams trying to make the playoffs, the Rams and the Cardinals, on Sunday, and both their quarterbacks are probably going to be out. Jared Goff has a thumb injury. Jared Goff will probably be gone. He hopefully will return to the playoffs. Kyler Murray has a leg injury, and he's kind of debatable. And here's the issue. We could have two backup quarterbacks playing for a playoff berth. That is not what you want. That is not what you want. And this is why Dallas was smart. The Dallas Cowboys, as much as we want to criticize Jerry Jones, Mike McCarthy, what they've done. When Dak Prescott got hurt and had that ugly injury, they had Andy Dalton, who's a very solid backup quarterback, and maybe you could argue he's about the bottom tier starting quarterbacks, but a really serviceable guy that can come in and win you some games. And they have that guy. They have Andy Dalton. And now Dallas has a chance to make the playoffs. And it's like out of nowhere. Because, when you have solid quarterback play, you can kind of stay afloat. So it's really going to be interesting to see how this Rams-Cardinals game looks. Because one of these two teams can mix the playoffs because of this. The Bears are in that conversation too. So it's going to be really interesting. And you never want to have to rely on your backup quarterback to clinch a berth in the playoffs. Not a recipe for success in the NFL. So now let's get to some college football news. Brian Kelly, head coach of Notre Dame, responds to critics who have been saying Notre Dame is illegitimate. Now here's what I would say to that. They are illegitimate if you're saying in terms of if they're in Alabama, if they're in Ohio State, if they're at Clemson. But if you compare them to the Texas A&Ms, the Georgia Bulldogs, the North Carolinas, the Floridas, they are legitimate. They're a top 5-ish program in the country. Right? I know people want to rag on Notre Dame because people are going to think they're going to get blown out by Alabama. They're not as good as Clemson, Ohio State, and Alabama, the other three teams in the playoffs. But you want to know what? They were probably the best out of the rest. We need to stop bragging on Notre Dame and banging on them. They're solid. They're a solid college football team. They have a really good head coach in Brian Kelly. Now, speaking of Ohio State, Ryan Day takes a shot at Clemson. Basically saying that the defensive coordinator signed Steele, and I'm paraphrasing right now, but basically what he said was, do they always know all the plays? I wonder how they know that. Doesn't seem right. Kind of taking a shot, and we've seen what Dabo has said about Ohio State in terms of them not being a team that should be in the playoffs. Friday, when we have the two college football semifinals, the rubber will hit the road, folks. We are going to see the men from the boys. Because all these people keep talking. And it's really easy to talk. It's really easy to talk when media members are asking you questions on Zoom and you're like, yeah, this is going to happen, yeah, this is going to happen. But when you get on the field, we're going to see. We're going to see, and somebody's going to get shut up. So I love it. I think it's going to be really entertaining. I think the Ohio State-Clemson game is going to be an instant classic. Now, in terms of a potential Heisman winner, Alabama wide receiver DeVonta Smith wins the 2020 AP College Football Player of the Year award. Now, why this is important, he was a Heisman finalist. Now, let me just show you this, guys, as I read this to you. 17 out of the 22 last Heisman winners won the AP College Football Player of the Year award. So this puts his percentages up higher. I know he's a wide receiver. We might not think of him in the same tier as we may think of a Kyle Trask or even a Mac Jones, his teammate, or a Trevor Lawrence. But here's what I'm going to say. Trevor Lawrence Trevor Lawrence missed a couple big games. So that, to me, that kind of hurts Trevor Lawrence's case. Look at Kyle Trask, 3 losses. Alabama, DeVonta Smith's team, they did beat him. And then if you compare him to Mac Jones, he's just a better player than Mac Jones. He's going to get drafted higher in the draft. DeVonta Smith has been the best wide receiver in the country the whole year, as I'm looking at his stats right here. So he's second in total touchdowns for wide receivers. He's first in receiving yards by a wide margin. And in also receptions. So DeVonta Smith is killing it, and he has the potential to do something that doesn't normally happen. A wide receiver for Heisman. That's how crazy this year has been in college football, right? And lastly, Trevor Lawrence is third team. He's third team. Got third team All-American. Now, at first, people might say, what is going on? Who's ahead of him? Well, Mac Jones is number 1. So I'm just going to say this. I know Trevor Lawrence is a way better quarterback. He's a way better football player than a Mac Jones is. But you want to know what? Mac Jones played more games. His stats, if you're looking at his stats, I was just looking at this briefly. He destroyed Trevor Lawrence. And again, Trevor Lawrence is the better quarterback. He's the better pro prospect. I'm not saying that. And Mac Jones has more talent. And you could argue is better coaching. He's in a better situation than Trevor Lawrence. But when you look at the stats, it's not close. He's lapping him in the field in terms of passing touchdowns, passing yards. They have the same amount of interceptions on the year. He has less sacks, higher passer rating, higher yards per pass, higher completion percentage. He's just dominating him in every aspect. So Trevor Lawrence deserved to be third team. And maybe he deserved to not be on first team, second team, or third team. Maybe he's an honorable mention, All-American. But it doesn't matter because it's not what you do in college. It's what you do in the pros. This guy has bigger and better things to do. And that's all we have for this edition of Outside the Shop with me, your host, Daryl Lane. Like I said, be on the lookout for the pod that I'm going to be releasing tomorrow. It should be very interesting. Going to be a lot of Bills talk. As the Bills we're having a little coronation. Silas is always funny and entertaining. We'll probably get some LeBron talk in there as well. Also, like I said, I hope everybody had a happy Christmas. If you're listening again, I hope everybody had a happy Christmas, had a safe Christmas, had a blessed Christmas as we get ready for the new year. It should all be fun. Thank you for tuning in, and God bless.